We want to do a quick demonstration of how to build a little bit more advanced list view, the type that you would find in Summon Distributor. This list view is comprised of templates and layouts and various integrations. So let me take one of them and change them to be our example. So first of all, we're just looking at the side views already there. So there's sermon, preachers, preacher, series, categories, category, and an API. So I think we'll use this preacher because it is a list query. So let's go look at its dynamic get. Now, there are two ways for us to build a list of items in a side view. Before I go into the dynamic get, I need to just show you the difference here. The one way, which I prefer, is the Ajax way, because I can load up to 10,000 rows or items per page. Whereas the normal way, and that's the dynamic get way, can only load quite, let's say, in a way that is not too slow, about 100 items per page. And so you basically need to use Pignation. If you don't use Pignation, it takes very long for the page to load if it's more than 100 items. If you want to load more than 100 items, I suggest you go the Ajax way. Now the Ajax, I am using FooTable plugin, and it is, I sure there's other ways to do it. Like most things, it's the thing the plugin that I have been using for many years now, and it's always been improving. The developers are constantly improving it, and if we open this URL here, let me open that. I'm going to refresh the page to give you a full idea of what we're talking about. So I'm going to refresh it. Then I'll scroll down. Here's the example. We count 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we go. It's now, in that moment we waited, loaded 10,000 rows, which is 1,000 pages. So if I click here to go to the very last one, you see it's 10,000 items. And I mean, it was very quick in loading those items into this table. Why I liked FooTable so much is if you now resize your screen here, it automatically loads those items like this. And I know there is such library also in Joomla. I realize that. And you're welcome to use any of those. It's just I've liked this components approach. Look at how little JavaScript you need on the page. You basically need a URL to the column headers, which are basically these values, and then you need a URL to get the JSON, and that's the only HTML you need on the page. And that's as simple it is to load 10,000 items like that in a table. It has interesting opportunity even with regarding to editing. So if I scroll down here, it has editing rows option here, and the editing rows option gives you option to add new rows and edit existing rows. I mean, this is crazy. Load a 10,000 size table of 10,000 items and then edit any of them. I really think this plugin is an amazing tool, and I'm not even that good with JavaScript, and I can manage this. So I'm sure all of you would be able to do the same. I'm not going to demonstrate this now. I don't have time. It's a little bit more complicated, I suppose, because I need to show you how to build these. And maybe we can look at that. But I'm first going to look at this normal implementation that uses dynamic get. Because in any case, usually if I'm going this way, I first build something here and then move it there. That's how I do it. But that's just me. I let JCB write some of the code for me, and I move it to the Ajax, basically backend. Okay. So back at our component, we have a few dynamic gets here already. All of them are list queries. So that means they are able to get more than one item from the database. Now, the request was made to get all the sermons and not have a filter, which is quite easy. I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to just change this to all. Then I'm going to go to the tweak, and I'm going to just remove that one option. I'm going to leave the access level. You know what? That's just good practice. You have access levels in your tables, and if the user isn't supposed to access an item, it's always good to, not allow them. If you don't want any filter, you simply remove this, and you can even remove the ordering, and it will work. Okay, so that is all you need to do to get all of the sermons from the table. I am going to just remove this one for my purpose. We can look at the joint options, and they seem okay. I'm going to leave them that way. And then the custom scripting, what I'm doing here with the custom scripting is I'm basically setting up links to the series, links to the categories, links to the actual sermon, links to the series, and basically first created a slug, and then this helper route, get sermon route, and get series route, and get category route is a helper class which is common in Joomla for your router. Now I'll show you where to find this class. So if we go to the front end, not the administrative area, but the front end, and we go down to sermons, and we go to helpers, no, not helpers, let's see, yeah, it is actually helpers. We go to helpers, then we see there's a file called route. So we open that, and that is where you find the route helper class. So in our code, I have used this placeholder option, which dynamically adds the word sermon distributor to helper route, and that's simply where it builds this class name. Now this class is loaded into the component dynamically, so you don't need to do it again, and it's doing it here. You see there is registering the class in the main PHP file of the component. So now in this class we have some static functions: get sermon route, get preacher route, get preachers plural and preacher singular, and categories and category, and series list and series and API, and that's about it. So that's where I get the names. If I'm going to target any of these areas, I'm coming in here and I can see how it's building. It's basically just building the link, right? It's grabbing the necessary string with the right option, the right view, adding the ID. Then we have a little function here, find item, which is in the same class. You can search for it. It's way at the bottom. Just give it a little space there. And what this does, and I mean, if any of you feel you can do this better, please make a pull request. Let me know. It's trying to find where this item, which we're building, this link, is maybe linked to a menu, so that we can append the menu ID to the item, and doing that, get the correct SEO URL. Okay, so that's what that's all about. And then, like I said, we get the ID, we dump it in here, we add the item ID to the link, and we return the link. Now, back in the code here, we add just one little tweak, and this is this route, JRoute, which converts that long URL to whatever the system setting is currently in regards to your search engine optimization. So that's what this little string here is all about. It's basically creating links based on the slug. Now the slug is a concept which takes the alias of an item and its ID and combines it with this double, with this colon between it, so that you can use it in your search engine optimization router. Okay, so that's what this custom code here is about. So we don't need to change this. That's the whole issue here. Your filtering doesn't affect this. Whatever you grab, you want these links on the page so you could click to those areas, right? You want to have it ready to use. And then here's a little tweak we made for the router to identify the correct alias. So we want to get the correct alias in relation to these different areas. So in this one, we're going to be in the sermon. We're doing sermons here. So we could change this SView to sermon, like that, because we know. Oh, wait a minute. We will be looking at a list of sermons. Okay, so in that case, we're not going to be able to very effectively build a alias, because at the moment it used to be the preacher's name, so that would have been preacher in here. This placeholder would have been replaced with preacher. Now, because we're not going to be filtering by preacher or category, we're going to end up having to just use the ID, because there is no identity, if I could say. There's no way to link the page to a specific identity. So what I would usually do in that case is I would just turn this off and see what is the default behavior, what comes out. Okay, so let's walk through that and see how that works out for us. Okay, so now we're just going to save as copy. That's what we're going to do. Leave the pagination on, because like I said, you want to be able to return only at most 100 items per page. So save as copy and close. So now we have a new list query called sermons all, and it is ready to be used, and it basically only filters by access. This is what I want, and that should do it. Now let's go to our site views. We basically took this item and we changed its get. That's what we did. Wait, no, not this one. This one, because you see it has a preacher ID, but it's actually having a list query for the sermons, and then it has a bunch of custom gets to get the number of downloads, the number of sermons, and the actual preacher's information. So we want to change this now, this view, to actually just get all the sermons in the system, right? So first thing we'll do is we'll change this to this sermon all option, and we'll change this also to that to see how that will look. And basically looks exactly the same, you see. So that means we don't really need to change anything here. All of this should still work just the way it was. If you want to do your own implementation here, then you'll need to basically use these values to build your own implementation. I'm using a lot of UIKit classes here, you see, and in these templates this is also what's being done. So we have many different implementations, but now you see we have these params in here. Now these params brings to us a certain values linked to the preacher page, but we're going to change this. This is no longer going to be preacher, because it can't have the same code name as another page. So we'll have to change this, and we're going to change this to all, just like that, and change this to all. So everywhere where we're dealing with params, we need to change the params. So we can highlight them, and we need to change that because we are changing this view. We're calling it all. Okay. Like that. Okay. Now this, I'm going to call this sermon, because the context is we're working with sermons. So the context is sermon, because if we check permissions, everything, we want to check that against the sermon permission structure. So I'm going to use sermon there, and everywhere else I'm going to just change this to all. And remember this, because we're going to have to go add a whole lot of new fields to this component to have those values. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We need to have this extra switch for the all display and the all sermons display, all sermons display. Now, mind you, this area shouldn't even be here now, because we are not going to retrieve a preacher information. So we're taking that out. So we only want here all sermons, and then let's look at this. I'm thinking, I don't want to get too complicated here, so let me change this back. It could work if we just left it the way it was. But nah, I started going down this way, so let me show you what that will mean to add these values in. It's just that in our template sermon table and sermon grid and sermon list, we're also going to have to look at some param values and make some tweaks. So we need to basically copy these down somewhere, so we can go look at them. So it's that one, sermon list, that one, sermon grid, and table. Okay, so those are the three areas we need to go look at. So let's do that now. Save as copy. Before we do, I just want to check out some other things. Okay, let's see. we have some color settings here. This should also be changed to all. So we're just checking for these params, right? So we can update everything correctly. Now this is for hits. We're not going to need the hits area because we're not targeting a preacher. So I'm going to take this out. We don't need this. That should be enough. Just check that it's not up here. Basically take that out as well. I had to take that out because it was calling that function hit, you see, which was in this area here. But I took that out because we're not getting a preacher. So since we're not getting a preacher, we don't need to increment the hit because we're not counting whether anything. So that's why I took that out. Here I'm doing some food table styles. This is still using an old version of food table. So this might be a good time to update this, but okay, I don't have time now, so I'm just gonna fall back to this for now. Okay, so here everything looks fine. I'm gonna say save as copy. Close. Did I do that already? No, that was good. Okay, so now we have a new side view and we need to go look at these templates. So let's go out of here, go to templates. So the templates we want to look at is these three. So it is first one, sermons table. It's this one here. Let's open that. Okay, so now we'll see that we have again a whole lot of params here with placeholders, side view, side view, side view. So now we're going to have a problem. No, not really, because we are using all. So this will update to all. Now I'll have to set this params for sermons, description, sermon preacher, series, category. So all of these params, which are actually fields in the configuration of this component, I'll have to update. So this S view will fall back to the view where this table is going to template is going to be used. So the side view, which we're working with, its code name is all. So it's going to fall back to the word all. This is what it's going to fall back to. Okay, so in that template, everywhere you see S view, it's going to be called all. So if we go to the sermons list, same thing here. Let's see. Yeah, this seems fine. Here, this one. It's going to fall back to all, like that. So we need to set a value for this. And that will then decide what type of list style this would have. And the same would go for the grid. If we open the preacher, not preacher, sermons grid. Here. We're again seeing a lot of S view values all over the place. And it is going to affect the component. If we don't set these parameters in the global settings, then it won't find this, but it will fall back to 0. So it'll still work, but it won't load anything because 0 means 0. Okay, it's null. So it will not load the preacher values, and that's why it might look like things are not working, because these configuration values aren't existing yet. We need to create them. I'll show you how. I was hoping to skip that, but I realize it's a helpful thing to know how to do that. So for now, first step would be to add this side view. So I'm going to just add it down here under before sermon. I'm going to say all sermons. Here we go. I'm going to give it an add menu. It has meta, it has access, and it's public. Okay, so I'm adding it in there to the component side views. Save and close. So if I compiled this now, we will get that view added to the component, and everything should be there. So let's do that. Compile it quickly. Okay, now we've got it installed. So we go here, sermon distributor. We have all our values here. We have no preachers or sermons or anything created, so we won't have a fully functional front end. But if we go to menus and we were to change our home to sermons, all sermons, save and close, go back to sermons and options, then to permissions, and we search for site, then we see there's a site, all sermons access, and it's set to allow, but sometimes if you're busy updating, it might not be set to allow, so you must change that for your public. And now if we go front end, oh, we have an error count. So let's look at that. That's on view HTML5, HTML PHP 48. Let's go look at that. No sermons were found. So here are our 48, line 48 in the sermons, views all, line 48. We have a number of sermons. Now since there is no number in the system, it's giving us an error. Let's fix that. That shouldn't be that hard to fix. We go back to our component in Joomla. In the side views, we open all sermons, go to PHP, and it's basically this one here. So what we can do is we can do a little check here. We say something like that. We first check, is it an array? And if it is, then we count the array, because that's how many sermons there are, and we add it here. And then here we can just say, null if there's none. Okay, now we actually don't need these values anymore, because we're not actually getting a preacher ID, So I'm going to remove this as well from the component, because we don't have a preacher in this return set. So we don't need those values. So I'm taking them out just for good practice. And then that should then get us going. Let's compile it again and install. So now all we have is no sermons were found. We can go back to our component and we can add a few values. Okay, so I've now added a whole lot of sermons and just randomly sorted them. We should have enough to work with here. Let's see, this is about it's about 400 sermons. Okay, so now on the front we're gonna just refresh the front page. And voila, we now have all of these showing up, and it is all of the sermons, and there is going to that specific sermon, and then this specific series, and it's showing us the hits of every sermon, and we can page to other pages. Big Nation, we can change this to a greater amount. Oh, clicked the wrong button here. Okay, so now we have 100. Yeah, so our new list is working as we expected. So, but we still haven't set the correct values here. So let me show you what I mean. In our display, we have this all sermon table color, and we have that set here. Then we have also some, if we open the default page, we have this display, and yeah, so the first one, or if it doesn't find 1 or 2, it defaults to list. So we don't have these values. Now, where are these values found? They are found in the components config. So if I go to the member or the administrative area, and I open the config XML, then those values should be in this file. Now this file, if we scroll down, we will see there's sermon default icon box. We scroll down. Here's the preacher. Remember preacher display? We changed that to all display, and list style. Now, so we see the preacher's values are here. How did it get here? In Component Builder, if I go back to Component Builder, there is an area called Component Config. If you open that, you'll find a whole lot of fields here. And it's got tab names that bundle them. So the series bundles all these values. So we'll have to go up all the way here to preachers, actually preacher, singular, this one. And we'll have to go create each of these fields except these. Menu, this one we'll have to do. This we won't, because we're not getting the preacher, right? So we just need to get the values that are related to the sermon layout. So it's from here, basically from these values. We'll need the we'll need to get it from after the spacer. Table or grid, list style, color, icon, description, series, category, sermon counter, hits, downloads, and switch sermon preacher open. So these are the fields we'll have to go and recreate for the all view. So we can copy switch sermons bracket preacher, and we can search for this in the fields area. Basically this string, just to be the same as the one you see there. So we're going to fields, and we type in that string and search. And so here are all those values that we need to also create. So there are two ways to do this. One is I can just copy them all with this batch option, or the other is to do them one at a time. So I'm going to do them let's just do at least one. So I need to change a few values here. I need to change this to all. I need to change that to all. And this as well, all. All. Table, grid, list. The default is grid. That's 2. Okay, so that is the first one. I'm going to save as copy. And then close. Now the second one. And so it goes on. I need to convert these fields for the all view. We can leave this to be sermons. Set if sermon hit should be shown, should be staying. That's right, that's right. This should be all hits that and then save as copy. Close. Now description. All show sermon description. This should be fine, fine. That must be all. We change that to all. Save as copy. I think that's more than enough. Now we go back to the component and to the config area. And then underneath the, I think I'm going to do it here before sermon. Right here. Just add a few fields. So it should be marked as global. We're going to change this to all. All. And then we'll just search for it, and we'll use the grid and the hits and the description. I'm just going to do those 3. So we are doing that for all. The table, the hits, the description. Save and close. And can compile and install. Now when we open Sermon Distributor backend, we go to options. We'll now have a new tab here called all. And we can change this to table, grid or list. It is already on list, so let's change it to table. Let's say don't show hits and don't show description, and save this value. So it is loading it correctly now as a table. Now let's make another change here. Let's say show hits and show description, and let's make it a grid and save. Now we refresh it, and there we go. We have it all now in a grid layout. Now it's again just giving us the last 100, and we can pignate through them correctly. So it's falling back to the way it used to work, except that it doesn't show the actual it's not filtering it by preacher. It's just grabbing all of the values. Okay, I think that's all for now. To show you how to load a list of values in JCB with pignation without any filter, like for example preacher. Okay, well, thanks for watching.